Hey everyone, welcome to or welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are going to be discussing and ranking the 4 main games in the Batman Arkham series. I will say that my opinions will probably be controversial and, you've probably watched a bunch of videos like this before, so I don't think I need to say this, but of course this is just my opinion. So if your favorite game is last and your least favorite game is my favorite, don't get upset by that. This is just my opinion. I've had people in comments getting mad, and I've literally stated it's my opinion. So don't get mad. This is only my opinion. I respect yours, so please respect mine. But anyway, I don't want to waste your time, and I don't want this video to be 30 minutes because editing is very difficult sometimes. So straight away, let's head into number 4, starting off controversial, at least I think, and that's actually going to be Arkham Knight. Now, Arkham Knight is probably the game I think I've covered the most on my channel, actually. However, that isn't because it's my favorite, it's because it's the only one I can get on PS5 right now, so it's the only one that I can really get footage of. And this game, to me, let's talk about the negatives first so I can at least end it on a more positive note. I think I've talked about this a lot. The boss fights in this game are terrible, not just in comparison to the Batman Arkham games, but just in general, boss fights are garbage. The Batmobile, while I love the fact it's in the game, the Batmobile's inclusion is not right. It just feels very strange and out of place, especially, in the boss fights. Those are my main issues, aside from the story. Of course, the Arkham Knight, very predictable who it is if you know anything about Batman. And even if you're not, I feel like the twist that it was him was still very obvious because of how he sort of shows up in the story. Again, it's not bad, it's just the weakest in my opinion, and something like story is probably the most important thing aside from gameplay. And heading into the positives, the gameplay here is absolutely the best. Of course, you don't really have moments anymore where your combo will drop. You have a lot more options in stealth and combat now. But unfortunately, to me, that just isn't enough to save it from being my least favorite. And as I said, this is by no means a bad game. And when we look at more positives like the graphics, this game looks amazing. It looks better than Gotham Knights does, and it looks like it could have come out this year. So there's no complaints here on that end. My biggest issue is just overuse of the Batmobile and the story just being way too predictable. And for me, when you're saying that this is the last game of the series, you have to make sure the story is good. And I think that the story was good all the way up until this game. In saying that, I do actually like this game's story because I think it's fun, but I don't think it's written very well. Alright, now being controversial again here, my number 3 is actually going to be Arkham City. Now, Arkham City is most people's favorite, but for me, I've never really understood why. And I will say that the story is absolutely the best in City. I'm not going to deny that. But for me, there's just something about City that just doesn't work for me. And weirdly enough, I actually prefer the simplicity of Asylum over this game. I think that what Asylum did, it definitely needs some polishing, which City absolutely accomplished, but I really appreciated how simple Asylum was and how claustrophobic it was. And I actually feel like the stealth sections are more difficult in Asylum because, of course, if you get caught, you die, basically. But in the other 3 games, if you get caught, you can usually grapple away, you can find somewhere to hide. But in Asylum, you're stuck in a room, generally, for stealth sections. So if you get caught, you're probably going to die. And I think it makes that game more risky, but also more rewarding. Of course, I'm also talking about Asylum now, but City, by no means do I hate this game or even dislike this game. It's still one of my favorite games of all time. And you could say that about Knight, of course, as well. But there's just been something about it that just does not work for me. I don't like the map of City that much. Again, it's not bad, but for me, it just is probably the weakest map in the series. I just don't, to be honest, I don't understand why people love this game as much as they do. And again, this is probably the most controversial thing I'm going to say. But again, I have to emphasize, I do love this game. I really, really do. I just don't think it's the best in the series. Again, positives. This game absolutely has the best story. It has an amazing twist. Of course, I won't spoil that, even though the game's a decade old. I'm not going to go too far into what the actual story is about, but Again, amazing story. I think the boss fights are probably the second best in the series, arguably maybe the best in the series. And you might be wondering why I haven't really said that many negatives about the game. And to be honest, I don't have too many negative things to say about this game. It's just that I think the two games remaining have even less negatives about it. One thing I will say that's negative, and this goes for every game except for Asylum, is that the game feels like there's always an excuse to not have people out on the streets. Of course, in Origins, it was like a snowstorm. In this game, it's obviously like it's separated from the rest of Gotham because it's like a prison city almost. And then in Night, of course, we have the threat of the fear toxin. But it just seems a little lazy to me. Just like you probably could have had more people just around on the streets. But before we head into the next game, I did just want to say I do not dislike this game. And yeah, I didn't really mention that many negatives because I don't think the Arkham games, aside from Knight, really have that many negatives. I just think that this game, it gets a lot of love and it 100% deserves it, but I think that the two games I haven't talked about yet are actually better. Alright, so now in number 2, which I'm sure a lot of you guys expected me to put this last or second last, it's actually going to be Arkham Origins. Arkham Origins I've always loved. And what's weird enough is actually Arkham Origins is the only game I've never fully completed simply because I got the game on my Xbox 360 basically just before I got my Xbox One. And I kind of forgot about the game. And then when I went back to it to play it on my Xbox One, my accounts wouldn't sort of link, so my progress would never save. I don't know why I said progress like that, but anyways, it would just never save. So I would play the game for maybe 3 hours, come back the next day, and it would be back at the start of the story. So as you can imagine, I said, fuck that, and I never finished it, which is really unfortunate, because if it was on PS4 or PS5, I would absolutely buy it and be able to play through it. But from what I have played through it, I know I love it so much. And I will say, even though Kevin Conroy is absolutely the definitive Batman, I think Roger Craig Smith does an amazing job here, especially as a younger Batman. I think the Batsuit in Origins is probably my favorite in the whole series, aside from maybe the Batsuit from my number 1 game, which of course you already know what it is. If you watch the channel, you probably already knew. But in case you don't, you obviously already know what my number 1 is. I've gone through all the other games, but Origins to me has an amazing atmosphere. I love the snow. Again, I love Batman's design. I love all the characters' designs, really. I love all the villains in this game. And I think that overall, this game probably has the best boss fights, actually, in the series. Of course, a lot of people would probably say City, like I mentioned before, but I think that this game City has a couple of bad ones, like Deadshot, whereas this one, I can't think of any that are outright terrible. If you can think of any, definitely put them in the comments because I've probably forgotten about it. But yeah, this game is amazing. It really is. Absolutely the most underrated game in the series. Definitely does not deserve the hate that it gets. And I think in terms of story, aside from the twist, of course, spoiler here, that Joker was Black Mask, I definitely think this game's biggest weakness is that it's basically the same map as City, which is a bit lazy. And I think that, well, again, the whole, snowstorm is why people can't be on the streets. Sort of, again, a bit lazy, but we can forgive that. But this game's biggest issue is just that Joker was the main villain again. This game should have strayed away from that and actually made Black Mask the villain, not him. But with all that being said, again, I love this game. My second favourite in the series. Now, my number 1, I go back and forth on whether this is my favourite game of all time. Definitely in my top 3, and that's Batman Arkham Asylum. This game is very special to me. You could argue it's because of nostalgia, which it definitely is, but there's something so amazing about this game that, in my opinion, none of the Arkham games have managed to capture. Now, just as a bit of a small story for you guys, Arkham Asylum was actually the first game I ever got on my Xbox 360. I shared it with my sister, and all the games we had bought were actually hers. They were all like R-rated because she's a lot older than me. So I played those games. It was very fun, but Arkham Asylum was the first game I actually bought, and it was the first game that was actually my game, and I absolutely loved it. I'd played nothing like it before. I hadn't really played games that much in general before, so this game blew my mind. I wouldn't know exactly how old I was. I was probably around 10 or 11 when I first played the game. And yeah, even to this day, it's one of my favorite games of all time, maybe even my favorite. I think that some of the weaknesses, as I want to go into, as I did with the rest of the series, is that the story isn't amazing and the boss fights are pretty weak, right? It actually has similar issues as Arkham Knight, but that was the last game, so they had a lot of time to perfect it, but they didn't. This was the first game, and they got a few things wrong, but I think for a first attempt at a Batman game, this was absolutely incredible. As I mentioned before, this Batsuit might be my favourite. The only reason I'm debating it is because I really don't like the bat symbol on his chest. I've always sort of preferred the Origins one, and also there's it's hard to explain really. I just don't like how it looks in this game, like the bat symbol on his chest. I know that's a really dumb thing to say, but it just looks sort of weird to me. With all that being said though, this is my favourite game in the Batman Arkham series. Some positives, I think I've already gone through it, but basically it's more of a risk-reward game, which I like. It's more simplistic, it's easier to learn in my opinion, and the combat and stealth, again, amazing for, your first try. It's incredible how well they did with it. So I just want to thank all of you guys for watching this video and consider subscribing for more Batman videos. I'm actually recording in a different part of my house, so if you watch my videos already, let me know if the audio sounds better or worse here. I also want to apologize during this video. I'm pretty sure my cat came into the room, so if you hear any noises from my cat during this video, I'm very, very sorry about that. But with all that being said, I do hope you enjoyed. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.